for you and me. Another key change, oh God, oh no. Gig nightmares for you and me. All right, gig nightmares. Here we are today with Mr. Mark Burkert. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing very well.
Nice.
So, obviously, I know you from playing guitar with Old School, but can you, just for the people of the internet listening to this show, can you tell us a little bit about your past, playing in bands, touring experience, and whatnot?
Yeah. So I'll try to be as brief as possible, but going back to the 80s when I was, just getting into my 20s, I started working at Ibanez Guitars. So I had my tenure there where I actually named the Ibanez Edge tremolo system, and I worked on Vinnie Moore's guitars and a lot of the shredder. The shred thing was big then. Then we used to play some of the famous when I was in an original band, then played some of the famous rock clubs like the Galaxy and the Empire Rock Club. So that's kind of really where I cut my teeth on playing in a loud band with the Marshall half stack and all that sort of thing. And that's kind of when I met Paul, the other guitar player in the band. Anyway, fast forward years later, I got an offer to join this band, and it wasn't really the kind of music I liked. I was always more of a shred, heavy metal 80s guy, and this was more of a goth industrial type of band. And although it wasn't my type of genre, I remember my roommate, he actually slid the CD under the door of my room, and I listened to it, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're amazing. So I had to go. I auditioned, I saw them play, and I was like, this is the band for me. I'm willing to join. So um, that's where I did my domestic touring. I did my overseas touring. I got to really cut my teeth. That's where you become the 1% of everybody that does anything in music. And then when you do that, the people that are really big are like, well, now you're the 1% of the 1%. So it was kind of cool. But getting into the meat and potatoes of things that you wanted to discuss, which was pretty funny. I almost have it kind of categorized from domestic tours to overseas tours and stuff like that. But some of the funniest stuff that happened with me is that I would meet people that were well known or in the music business, and I didn't know who they were. Everything from being a jerk to them, and not really being a jerk, but somebody famous comes into my dressing room. I'm like, well, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. Well, I was getting a beer. Like, get your own beer. Go down to the bar at the lounge. But yeah, that stuff like that happened. Then funny stuff would happen. For instance, the one time we were playing in Dallas, Texas, we were opening up for King's X, and all I know is that these two guys were passing around rounds of shots of Jägermeister, and I'm like, who are these guys? I was like, no, I don't want any more. I don't want any more. And they're like, come on, don't be a pussy. I was like, oh, all right, so we were drinking. And I just remember being really sick that night. We went back to the hotel room, and I was like, who were those jerks? Kept forcing us to drink. And you're like, dude, that was Dimebag and his brother. I'm like, oh, okay.
So, remember what year that was around?
I'm gonna say 2002.
Wow.
Yeah, in fact, to put things into perspective, I think it was the Dogman tour for King's X.
I'm pretty sure Dogman came out in 94.
Oh, okay. Well, then what would have come out in 2002?
For King's X, I'm actually not sure.
No, it definitely wasn't 94. It was definitely like 2002. But at any rate, I just kept seeing that CD around. Maybe they were just selling a lot, because what King's X used to do is they would go to truck stops and see their CDs and cassette tapes in like the bonus, and they just buy them for like $1 and then go back and sell them at the merch booth for like $10 or $15. So they're pretty savvy in that regard. But some of the other things that we learned about being savvy like that, well, we didn't have anything in the discount racks because we were too new and not quite that popular. But they used to, sometimes venues would take a certain percentage of all the money you make on all your merch and you used to have to sometimes sneak it in and like say, let the person who was counting all your merch in, like, yeah, I brought in 100 shirts, and then you have another bag of another 50 or something that you just sold, and so you didn't report everything. So it's kind of like, you know, evading taxes, so
Yeah.
to speak.
I wasn't aware that practice at venues was going on for so long, because I mean it's a unfortunately commonplace thing now where whatever Live Nation venue is going to take 15% of whatever your merch sales are. But I didn't realize it was going back 20-25 years now at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, back when like everything was cash. Now probably like most everything is not cash, so it's like easier to trace, right? But somebody else I didn't know that we were on tour again, the King's X tour. We're playing at the Catwalk. It's not there anymore in Seattle, Washington. And I'm up there playing, and there's some dude just like staring me out. And I'm like, the heck is with this guy? And it was like the 80s. Yeah, I'll give you like the visual. Like he's standing in the back of the venue just like this, like watching. I'm like, the frick is with this guy? What is he doing? He like keeps watching me. He's starting to give me a complex, like I used to have in the 80s, because all the killer guitar players were out watching. Like, the joke was like, how many guitar players does it take to screw in a light bulb? And it's like three, one to screw it, and the other two to say they could have done it better. So, uh, anyway, I didn't know who this guy was. We get out, we're signing autographs at our merch table. Yeah, thank you. And he's like standing there, and I'm like, who is this guy? Like, what does he want? What does he want with me? It almost felt like a Seinfeld episode where like somebody's stalking me, and I didn't know who he was. And he finally comes up to me, goes, "Hey man, I really enjoyed your guitar playing. You got a great tone, and man, band's really good." I was like, "Oh, thanks for the kind words. I'm Mark." And he goes, "Oh, Steve Lynch." I was like, "From Autograph?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "What are you doing in Seattle?" And he said, "I live here." I said, "Man, are you like rich and retired?" He's like, "Dude, no." He said, "Our singer and manager embezzled all the money." He said, "I teach guitar for a living." I was like, "Oh my God." So I said, "What are you doing now?" And he's like, "Nothing." I said, "You want to come backstage and have drinks with us?" He's like, "I would love to." So I hung out with like one of the coolest guys ever. So I really, and that was probably one of my favorite stories. That one of the coolest people I ever met, and great guitar player, and just one of the pioneers of the whole MTV scene and all that
Sure.
that stuff. So that was kind of uh, cool ones. Is Steve Lynn. Oh, and then we played again the King's X tour, because a lot of celebrities used to follow them around. And we're playing the Key Club again. Same guy, some different guy comes up to me, and it's like I'm talking to for a while. We're talking about gear. He liked my guitar playing. He liked my tone. And just for reference, well, I'll get into it later. Uh, I was using instant sound. Like I'm a big proponent of real amp sound, but you know, it for that particular band, we needed a lot of sounds. If you ever listen to anything, if you look up Tapping a Vein on YouTube and you listen to some of the songs, I have like three, four, maybe five different sounds going on in each song. Everything was real textural, because they didn't really want me playing a lot of guitar solos, like the millennial, the late 90s or 90s. Nobody really wanted you to play guitar solos. So it was like I kind of had to use some different devices and textures and ideas to write music and
Sure.
perform and do something kind of cool. So yeah, I was at the Key Club, and we're playing, and I'm talking to this guy, and I was like, "Oh, nice hanging out." You're like, "Dude, you're talking to Hal." I was like, "Hal who?" I'm like, "Dude, that he has a TV show called Talk Soup." I was like, "I think I heard of that, but I didn't." Again, somebody else that was apparently well known, that I had no idea who they were. So
Okay, like you have all these different stories, and it's funny because like it happens more often than you think it would. Like my '80s tribute band, we're playing down at up and down the Jersey Shore all the time. So
uh-huh.
naturally, you end up seeing sort of like, I guess you would call them like people that I personally don't know, and like I don't watch reality TV or anything like that. But like you have like a lot of like the people from Jersey Shore or whatever,
Yeah.
hanging out at the clubs or whatever. So like we play places pretty often, and some of the girls in my band will just start freaking out, getting all crazy. Oh my God, that's so and so from Jersey Shore. I'm like, I've never seen a single episode. I have no idea what you do. I guess
Yeah.
you're famous. That's cool. And one time I was doing like some sort of like I guess it was like a band audition sort of thing, like a showcase for a booking
Uh,
agent, I think. And I'm introduced to this guy. I'm shaking hands with this guy. I don't even remember his name, but like he was from another like reality TV show where you have like something like 20 kids and like three wives or however that. I don't watch reality TV, but it's like it really does happen more often than you think it would.
well, if you've ever played in Miami, there's a good chance you'll run into Yngwie Malmsteen. From what I heard, there's like people down there, they're trying to play in cover bands, and he just comes in and says, "Oh, I want to play, I want to play," and they're like, "We play Deep Purple."
That's
And
pretty
everybody,
awesome.
and I heard this because there was a guy I bought a Marshall Plexi from, and unfortunately, I found out that he had passed away a few years back. But this goes
Mm.
back 10, maybe 15 years ago that I went down to Miami, and I was like, "Hey, you know that amp I sold you?" I said, he said, "Yeah." He said, "What's anything wrong with it?" I said, "No, but I'm traveling down to Miami." I said, "Would you mind if I looked you up?" And he's like, "No, no, let's hang out." I was like, "Okay, great." So I'm hanging out with this guy. He goes, because he asked, he said, "Well, why did you want that amp?" I said, "Well, I like the AC/DC sound, the, Van Halen, Yngwie, they use these amps. I kind of, have a pretty good rapport with them. So I know what to do." And he goes, "Oh, Yngwie." He goes, "That guy's my neighbor." I said, "Really? That's pretty cool." He goes, "No, it's not." I said, "Why not?" He goes, "Everybody really doesn't like him too much." I was like, "What?" Bit of an ass. I said, "Well, I've heard about that." I said, "Can we go knock for Yngwie?" He goes, "Yeah, we could go knock for Yngwie." So we went to his house and knocked for him, but he wasn't there.
Ah,
But apparently, yeah, I don't know if he does it now, but maybe back then he used to just kind of come and just work, say, "Hey, let me jam, and I want to play Deep Purple," and so,
pretty cool.
but yeah, so
Uh,
I,
yeah, I didn't see Yngwie when I played in Florida, but when was it? December 2023, my 80s tribute band played a handful of shows down in Florida for like the weekend, and one of them was at the casino at Dania Beach, which is like the next town over from Fort Lauderdale.
uh-huh,
Dave Spitz from he played bass in Black Sabbath for like 2 years in the 80s. He was actually there, and so I mean, kind of cool. I thought it was pretty cool.
yeah, huh, check that out, man. That's pretty cool.
Sure.
There's a metal band in Florida, and a buddy of mine, one of my, because I told you I started Ibanez. So I've been a luthier for a long, long time. So I still, every now and again, people say, "Hey, you still working on guitars? Can I bring something over?" I'm like, "Sure," because just for reference, I'm a realtor by day. That's what I do. That's how I make my money. I just kind of do that as therapy, and I like to help people out every now and again. But the one guy, he was touring with Rattan, Dave Rattan. Is that the name? Like a speed metal band?
The name sounds familiar.
Yeah. Anyway, I saw them. It was so weird to just hang out with those guys, and when they were playing a gig, and the bass player was my client, and here I am, hanging out with this guy who's pretty big name in the metal scene. But anyway, getting back to this stuff. So we first then, yeah. So I think I told you about the story about Opeth, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So here we are, we're touring with these guys, and I don't know what the heck is going on with them. Really nice guys, like, but they're all completely like different personalities. And I'm like, they don't even seem like they're in a band. In fact, I remember the one time we were playing in West Virginia, I think it was called Jack's, and the drummer's like lying on the front of the stage while everybody's loading in, getting ready for sound check. And I'm like, "Dude, what's the matter?" And he's like, "Oh man," he goes, "I'm practicing abstinence." I was like, "You're not having sex?" "No, man, I'm coming down from heroin." I was like, "Oh, well, that sucks." But then the same guy, a few weeks later, we're at the Troubadour in LA, and he's doing, and have you ever been to the Troubadour?
Been outside of it. I haven't been
So,
inside it.
so inside, if I remember correctly, the second floor is where the dressing rooms were. I'm thinking there was like a glass window that you could kind of look over the stage, and we were watching this guy. I think his name is it Mark Mendez? This is the Deliverance tour. So whoever was playing on that tour, and that was like brain damage. I used to like watch every show. I was like, God, man, these guys are amazing. But I didn't know I didn't really know that they were anybody. I just thought they were some European band that got a headline slot and we're opening for them. And he's doing his drum. In the middle of all this, he puts a drumstick in his mouth. This guy's on heroin, grabs a drum key, starts tuning his floor tom, puts it back, and he never misses a beat. And I looked at my bass player, I'm like, did you just friggin' see that? That was amazing. But he was also the same person. He was a bit of a ball buster because he knew that me and my bass player used to like to party a little bit. Whereas the singer and drummer were like very like, don't you guys, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be there. And we were, we were playful with it. We didn't have a problem with it. We were spending all our money on dope or anything like that. So, if anybody, he used to, we're like, yeah, like if you're gonna do anything, like just be inconspicuous because Heather and Eric they get mad at us. And he's like, yeah, no problem. He comes into the House of Blues, Chicago House of Blues. He bangs on the dressing room. He goes, hey, Mark, Joe, come on. I'm like, oh. So we got in trouble for that. We weren't allowed to partake of those kind of activities anymore. But and then Michael, as nice of a guy as he was, I got a little insulted by him once, and because he used the same device I use. Remember, I told you I had that instant sound, so I was using back in the day. It was kind of like state of the art. It was kind of at the end of it being state of the art because Line 6 stuff had already come out, but it was the Boss GT5, and every song, every sound that's on any one of those Tapping the Vein CDs that I played on. Is that going through a Mesa Boogie Mark IV. And he said, oh, if you know Michael from Opeth, he talks like this. Hey, Mark, I really like your tones. And I was wondering, could I download your patches? And I was like, no friggin' way, man. I was like, what are you out of your mind? Do you know how much time I spent? Like, says, you have any idea how much time I spent like trying to make that thing sound like a real But he never got bothered by that. He was always so cool to me. In fact, I used to crack me up. He used to be one of those guys that just smoked a cigarette once in a while, and I used to smoke then, and he used to come and goes, Mark, could I have one of those cigarettes? Sure, no problem. So I have fond memories of those guys. They were great musically, a lot of fun to hang out with, and then that goes to the next European band that we toured with, which was Paradise Lost. We actually shared a tour bus with them in Europe, and they were an interesting group. As things turned out, our singer, she wound up getting married to Greg McIntosh, who's the lead guitar player for that band. But the singer, he was a trip. He always seemed pissed off all the time. Did you ever look at anybody in a band and they're just like the British, and they just have that kind of like,
oh sure,
that look like, so it was pissed off. And we were also on tour with this band. So we're on a bus with Paradise Lost, and one of the techs from the other band, Within Temptation, was walking by our tour bus, and he always used to, he's one of those long hair guys. He'd always like look in the window and go, one of those guys, and he just like grabbed the curtain, just shut it off. He was like, so was in a bad mood. And then he always sat in the same spot on the bus on the bench, and he's like, and there was a bunch of people on the bus. We were in Germany, and we had the bus door open. We were inside. Some of us were inside. Some of us were milling around outside the bus. We're all having a good time. And he goes, I think somebody shat on the bus. He goes, Joe, go check it out. And that was our bass player. And he goes, yeah, somebody shit on the bus. And he goes, go find out who it was. Bloody hell. So he went out, and Joe comes back and he said, yeah, he said, I talked to everybody. I said, did anybody shit on the bus? He said, and some girl just said, yeah, it was me. And then one of the crew, another British guy, real, Cockney accent, he goes, imagine that, a woman who's not embarrassed by her own feces. It's just like, the conversations were crazy. And those guys would sit up all night long in a bus. They would just talk and talk and talk. and not stop till like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. Like
Hmm.
I was like, I'm taking advantage of this crap. I'd be in my bunk by 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be up at 7, 8 o'clock, and I'm out the door. I wanted to visit every single city that we went to that was like foreign to me. I mean, these guys have been doing this for 15 years at this point, so it's all just like, yeah, it's the same old stuff. I've been here a million and five times, but because my bass player and I used to get up early in the morning and we didn't know what we were doing. It was our first bus tour, and we would get out of our and we'd have our bags in our bunk, and then we'd be going through our bags, and then we'd go and be to the back lounge, and it was a double-decker bus, and come back and forth, and my drummer was the worst because he would always get confused on stuff, like he didn't know what he'd forget this and he'd forget that, and he had these Adidas sweatpants, and when he walked, it would go. So all the rest of the guys, I said, they stayed up late. We're making all this noise in the morning. And then, of course, there he is again, the singer from Paradise Lost, sitting there in the bus just like this. He goes, pots and pans, pots and pans. I was like, we're all looking at each other like, pots and pans, what are you talking about? You're making so damn much noise. He goes, nobody can sleep. He goes, for fuck's sake, just take your bag and go in the back lounge and be done with it. I was like, there's one of the times we got yelled at by them, but we kind of like learned our lesson, about doing stuff like that. Oh, so one of the funny things that you know, that I thought was funny is that they hated this Dutch band Within Temptation. Not them personally, but they were the sweetest people in the world, but they just indulged in everything. They took over everything like it was their tour.
Hmm.
So we would get to the venue, and the venue would have showers and all this, and we walk in like all the towels are soaking wet all over the ground, like there was no towels for anybody else to use. It would be time to go in and eat, and like there was no food. They ate all the food already. So, and it came down to, even when we would pull in to the venue, the Dutch bus driver had the better spot. And I remember our tour manager, he was just like, he goes, if that, he said, if that bloody Dutch bus driver is parked up in a spot, I'll have his fucking head. And sure enough, that bus was parked up. It was a big festival in Spain. And he told the bus driver to stop the bus immediately. He goes, Sammy, stop this. And he went out there and he just screamed. Oh my God, his face was so red. He was screaming at the top of his lungs. And you know what the Dutch bus driver said? He's like, oh, I'm sorry. He just got out. It's like you can scream and holler at these people, and they're just like, oh, we didn't know. We didn't know. Oh, we're sorry. So after all this of them overindulging, eating all the food, using up all the towels, using up all the hot water, taking up the best spots, then one time we were in Italy, and we're staying in line. We're all getting uh, they're making us like fresh sausage sandwiches and stuff. And I forget all these people's names. It's been so long. But the drummer Within Temptation, he's standing there. He goes, and they made his sandwich. He goes, "Can I have that other piece too?" And I was like, "Yo," I said, that was for my sandwich, you fat slob." Yeah, and he's like, "Oh." Yeah, I said, "I'm only messing with you." So that's like the crux. I don't know if that's how much time that. Oh my gosh, I've been talking for like 20 minutes now.
That's awesome. But like,
I don't know if that's good material for you, or
I mean, I think it's pretty awesome.
but
So most of the
yeah,
people you've met, it sounds like you've had mostly positive interactions with them, despite not knowing who they are. And but I'm curious, have there been any people, any bands you've toured with that weren't as friendly?
yeah. So there was a band that I think they were called Zug Island. Oh, that was with Dope. They're kind of a little egotistical. They kind of overplayed their sets. I mean, when we were on tour with Lacuna Coil, there was another band from Canada, another band like young guys, and I was like, they kept playing over their set time and cutting into our set. And you know how annoying that is. But you know, and our singer, she goes, Mark, you're good with talking with people. Can you talk to them? I was like, not a problem. So I went up to him. I said, hey guys, how's it going? And they're like, and I said, see the set times because you post on the
Yeah.
yeah, like this band goes on from this time to this time, Tapping the Vein this time to this time, Lacuna Coil this time, or whoever we were on tour with. I think it was Lacuna Coil. And he said, yeah, we go on at 8 o'clock. I was like, that's right. I said, what time do you get done playing? It says 8:30. I was like, great. I said, how many songs you doing? Oh, I don't know, like 8 or 10 songs. I was like, really? I said, well, you're going to play till 8:30. I said, I don't care if you're in the middle of the song. I said, you're going to stop at 8:30. Yeah, we should be done around 8:30. I was like, no. Who has a clock? I said, does anybody have a clock? I made him go out and buy a clock and put it on the guitar player's amplifier. I said, when that says 8:27, that's your last song. Okay. I said, he's going, oh, okay. And again, they weren't confrontational or anything like that. They're just naive people. Like, you know, we were naive when we first started. And but that was like a big thing with some bands. Some bands just didn't give a shit. They, you know, they'd leave the stage and mess. There was beer and crap all over the place. And when we were doing the van tour, I played manager. And when I was doing that, I was responsible because it all started. I forget the band. Oh, the Electric Hellfire Club was our first tour, and our manager said, "Bust their balls." He said, "You know, make them go through boot camp." So, sure enough, he would yell at us almost every night. And then after that, he became one of our good friends. We'd actually, when he wasn't on tour, he'd come and see us play and sleep in our bed in our hotel room on the floor, like passed out drunk. What was his name? But he was a cool dude. And but I remember he used to scream and yell at us every night. That was like probably like the most, and it was over nothing. And I'm like, what the fuck is the matter with this guy? He's like, but then I found out later that it was our manager that said, yeah, you know, kind of fuck him up a little bit. And then when I was, like I said, I was playing manager and we were going out on our first tour, and they were like, you know, what do you guys want to eat? And Heather was always afraid to ask for too much, and she's like, you know, whatever you can, like, how about a 6 pack of beer and a pizza? So after like a week, I was like, do you mind if I like start fulfilling a rider? Because I'm watching these other stage managers or tour managers, like, you know, they're getting all this stuff. Next thing you know, like at the end of the when we're out with King Zector, like, where are you getting all stuff? Because I was like, I'm going to need towels for the shower. I'm going to need a case of water. I'm going to need a case of beer. I'm going to need a fifth of this kind of vodka. And, you know, and everybody was, come on, don't ask for too much. We're trying to build I was like, just relax. But at the end of the tour, we had like five. We had a whole bar full of stuff that each person. I said, "What do you want tonight? I'm going to get you vodka. You want Jägermeister. I'm going to have tequila. You want this. You want that." And that's, you know. And then King's X came into our dressing room, like, "Where did you get all this stuff?" And we're like, "Mark." And I'm like, "Man, we have to take you on tour with us." But I had never done that. So anyway, yeah.
So
So
let me ask, is there, in your opinion, is there any sort of like fine line then of what to put on your tour rider when you're an opening band?
yeah, I mean, there is, but if you've ever seen that TV show with Sylvester Stallone, what's it called? Tulsa King. You know, like I think the first episode, somebody says, he said, you know, pardon my friend, like, you know, because I think he asked him for, you know, give me a whiskey. And he goes, well, you know, how did he put it? He's like, the answer is always no unless you ask. So I used to always ask. And, you know, I used to get things more likely than not, but I developed a good rapport with, by the time the second tour came around, third tour came around, I'm like, hey, yeah, it's Mark from Tapping the Van. Oh, yeah. You want your usual? I'm like, yeah. And we would get it. But then one time, because some places like the Whiskey a Go Go didn't want you bringing your own liquor in. They wanted you buying. I was like, I'm on tour. I'm not making that much money anyway. I'm not going to the bar and spend all that money. And somebody from their crew the Whiskey A Go Go went through all our bags and took the bottle. They confiscated our bottles, and I flipped my lid, and we got it all back. I had like a half a bottle of this, and he had like a quarter bottle. We got all brand new bottles.
I mean, it would make sense for like, let's say TSA or whatever at the airport to check your bags, but why is the Whiskey A Go Go checking your
Yeah,
bags?
they're just going through all our stuff. I guess they didn't want bands bringing in their own contraband, so to speak.
That's
But,
oh, I've never heard of that
yeah.
before.
And then, like I told you, we had weird people coming through our dressing rooms. We were in Las Vegas, and I think Slipknot played the night before. And this guy is dude with long hair just comes like muscling. He goes, and I was like, "Can I help you?" He goes, "Yeah, I think somebody stole my Jack Daniels." And he goes up to the refrigerator, he opens it up, and he slams it shut. And he's like, "This is bullshit." And I'm like, "The frig is this guy?" My singer and I were having a conversation. We just looked at each other like, "The frig is this?" And they're like, "Dude, that's one of the clowns from Slipknot." I'm like, again, what do I know?
That's
Apparently, they played there the night before, and he's on tour with Slipknot, and he's worried about a bottle of Jack Daniels. Hence, I'm complaining about the Whiskey Go Go going to our bag. So I guess it's a little ironic that I should say anything about one thing or the other. But
but still, that's just it's kind of funny. Like, I mean, myself, I haven't had all that many touring opportunities opening for big bands. Like, I've done some. Let's see. Right now, we're in May. 2 months ago, I was in Europe opening for Tarja Turunen and Marco Hayatala from the band's Nightwish. Finnish
oh yeah,
metal.
oh okay,
And my drummer in my 80s band, he's a huge fan of them. And he kept trying to get me to, listen to all their stuff and become a big fan. But I was worried, well, if I become too much of a fan, I might end up like embarrassing myself or whatever. So I kind of made it a point where it's like, okay, I know enough about them that I can have a conversation with them and say, hey, I really like this song off the new album, but not enough to be like an absolute fanboy. But like, at least in your instance, like where you're meeting all these people and you just kind of have very vague ideas of who they are,
yeah,
not even knowing who they are. Like, I think that's just awesome because, well, then you get to talk to them like a real person. And also, if they do happen to have any sort of like ego trip or whatever, it just kind of knocks them down to earth. That's
yeah, and
awesome.
and nobody really did. And I think one of the few, if only, bands that I was really looking forward to playing with was King's X because I remember the first time I saw them, they opened up for Blue Murder. If you remember them,
Oh,
John.
Blue Mart is awesome.
I mean, that was insane. That was 1989. And I kind of didn't get them because I was looking forward to Blue Murder. So I was like, whatever. So it's so funny. A buddy of mine today, he's actually making films and doing stuff. He was just at my house today and he's working on a streaming network and this guy's on the like really big stuff. Then I was in a band with him prior to me even going on tour. And I remember every time I used to go to his house, he had that King's X CD, the one that's the self-titled one. I think it's probably like is it their fourth CD or something like that? Yeah, the one with Black Flag.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just like man, I really kind of got into them then. So 10, 11 years later, here I am touring with them, and I'm like, I remember warming up. Well, Ty Tabor coming over to us. We're waiting to like set up and do a sound check. And he's like, hey, I just want to say I'm real sorry about it's just taking us a little longer. And well, it's just taking us a little longer. So I'm sorry. No, no, that's cool, man. Take your time. We don't care. And it was in where was it? Georgia. I forget where in Georgia it was, but that was our first gig with them, our first leg of the tour, and it was the greatest thing to me. And then we go up and we do a sound check, and I'm like, just goofing around, noodling around some riffs, and Tabor comes up and he goes, "Hey, Mark, your name's Mark, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Man, I really like some of them riffs you're playing, man. That sounds real good, and your tone is really, really good." I was like, "Oh my God!" And we went back to our hotel room that night, and I were like gushing, like, "Oh my God, he complimented you. I can't believe." I'm like, yeah. I was like, he's probably just being a nice guy, but I'll probably say that that's the most memorable experience I had on tour because how nice they were to us, and it was just such a great time that you know, a lot of times when you're on tour, you play your set and then you're back in the dressing room, you're talking to people, you're doing other things while the other bands are playing. As soon as we were done, you know, our stuff was off the stage, we're in the dressing room, and I would come right back out. I watched every single show.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was probably my highlight of everything that we had done in the early 2000s. And, you know, I think we kind of called it a day. Was that 2005? Then started with, I got my old job back at a newspaper, and I started fixing guitars again, and then started playing in cover band. So I kind of got that bug. I wanted to play. I wanted to play a lot. I was like, man, people were making good money doing it, and I started doing that. Next thing I know, I guess it was at 2005, 2000, maybe 8 years later, met a girl, found out she was going to have a baby, and I was living in this little studio apartment, and I was like, you know what, we can't stay here, you know. So I wound up buying a house, and my daughter was born, and then I lost my job, and I'm like, what am I going to do now? And she said, get your real estate license. So that's what I did, and 10 years later, here I am, and it turned out to be the best career move ever. And now, and then after the bands that I was in, Paul and I reconnected, because Paul and I met in that. And if you go back to the beginning of the story, the whole 80s scene in the Philadelphia, New Jersey area. And he said, "Man, how would you like to play in my band?" And I was like, "Well, I'll sit in with," because I was starting to do sessions and sitting in with people. It
Mhm.
was like it was a game to me. Let me see if I could like learn 35, 40 songs and like just go and sit in with a band and have my tone fit with them and make it happen. So I was starting to get into doing that, but I ultimately joined old school, and I can't believe it's been like 12 years now, 13 years, something like that, that I'm you know, I've been playing in that band. And then that's, you know, they always want to play the M3 festival, and they always play outside. And I always say, no, I'm not going down there. You guys play in the rain, you play for free. And I just absolutely don't have the time to go down and party, because, you know, the weekends in May, it's busy time for me for real estate. So, but we have a new singer, and she really asked me to do it, and I was like, all right, you know, I'll do it for you, because I love playing with her. And we went down, we just had a blast, and then that's when I met you.
Yeah, but I think that gig also kind of falls under the topic of this show, Gig Nightmares, and the fact that everyone else, like, I don't think, you got anything, but, like, I'm pretty sure, everyone else got some sort of, like, sun poisoning or anything just from being out in the sun all day.
You know what's funny, I didn't get that, but when I came home the next day, I loaded my gear uh out of the truck into my car, and I went home, and I started getting these dizzy spells. Like, I was like,
Ugh.
whoa. And it lasted for like a day and a half. I started getting worried. I was like, man, I hope I don't have low blood pressure, or I hope it's not something else. But after that, I was fine. But yeah, I mean, you know, it was kind of a cool thing. I keep saying, I'll never do it again. Never again. I'm never going down there again. You know, I'm playing for free and dealing with all that nonsense, and then being stranded because I don't have my own car, but I didn't want to drive down there. So, you know, but it was cool. I met a lot of cool people. I met you, and, you know, and actually, didn't I met you through my singer's boyfriend, right? Didn't he introduce us?
Yep, Trevor.
Trevor? Yeah. Now, how did you know him?
I actually met him last year at M3. We were just, like, hanging out in the lobby at the hotel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like him and a bunch of other people, and he's always very respectful to me. I think he likes my guitar playing, or at least he says he does anyway, and I believe him. He knows his stuff. He's good, but he's always asking. He's like, "Yo, man," he said, "You and Paul, man, you got to get rid of the half stacks and get like helixes." I was like, "Get the hell out of here!" And you know, we're gonna have a one-dimensional sound. So uh we're kind of known for being like that hard arena sound. Like, you know, if you're going to see a live band, you're getting that with us, at least with that kind of. And I think that's why Deej loves singing with us, because you know, all the other bands are like really doing the instant sound thing. Now, how about you? Are you carrying around a rig, or you doing the instant sound thing?
I'm personally, well, with how often I'm gigging, I'm always kind of going more towards convenience as opposed to.
Yeah.
I have my Line 6 Podgo, which is even smaller than the Helix, but like it has everything I need there. I have like a drop tune pedal on there for changing tunings on the fly.
Yeah.
And I have my talk box on there for, for doing any sort of like Bon Jovi or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like that just goes right in my backpack. I've got in-ears, or if it's
Yeah.
a place with like in-house sound using the floor monitors. And for the most part, I don't really have any major issues with it. Don't get me wrong, I would love to have an amp on stage, but it's just like another piece of gear to carry around. And
Yeah.
like if I had roadies, if I had someone else doing it. Now, granted, I completely acknowledge, yeah, I probably sound a little bit entitled saying that, considering that wasn't a thing 30, 40 years ago when people were doing it every single night, doing it more nights out of the week. But I don't know, modern times, I guess.
Yeah. Well, so just, put things into perspective. When 20 years ago, when I was on tour and we are going to Europe, I would have all my clothes in a backpack.
Uh-huh.
And then in a suitcase, I would have my GT5 wrapped with some other kind of clothes to support it. And I would go over, and I had all the adapters and stuff. And luckily, when we opened when we toured with Paradise Lost, Greg McIntosh was, mate, I'll have that same unit if you just, it's already set up for European. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's cool. So I did download my patches to his, and then I set and base it. I don't even use it. You could just set it back to the factory when you're done. So that made things a whole lot easier for me.
I'm surprised he was nice enough to let you do that.
He did a lot of cool things for me. So they normally don't, all I had was that. So I used whatever backline was available. So he just let me use, I think he had a plexi that he brought with him, and he let me use that, and I just ran that through his he was just using line six, the original line six head with two line six cabinets, like two stacks, and he really used them. I mean, not that they were ultra loud or anything, but what they did, and it sounded really good because in Europe you have real stereo systems, whereas a lot of the systems in the States are mono, from what I
Mhm.
understand, from what I heard, and they would mic them and take a line out, which was kind of like a new thought process back then. But they sounded amazing, even though I could still tell. I was like, nah, it's a little papery sounding for me. But that's what Lacuna Coil used. Even my buddy who was in Seether for a while, that's what he was using. They were all using line sixes, Pat Callahan. But he's like he was oh man, that kind of stung a little bit. So we all used to play this place called the Grape Street Pub, all the original bands, and it was like a really cool kind of cult. Like a lot of musicians would play there. In fact, Clive Davis was there to look at this band called oh, they were a young band. I forgot what they're called, but they went out. They toured with everybody. Toured with Van Halen. Uh, oh man, name escapes me. Really cool kids, but Clive Davis signed them. He was there hanging out. But I remember I was in between tours, and I went there, and I'm hanging out with this kid Pat Callahan, who's in this band Sloth, and he says, man, he goes, I got to say, I'm really proud of you. I was like, why? You're a lot younger than me. He's like, dude, he goes, you're the only one out of all of us that ever did anything or ever made it any place. I was like, oh, well, thanks, man. So I go on tour again, and I come back from tour doing my, middle of the road tour, and he goes up with that 1% from nothing to 1%. Seether comes into play the Grape Street, and they pick him up immediately, and right away he goes to like top of the line Prevost bus, first class, flying all around the world, and then he just, after like I think a year and a half, he just didn't. They weren't giving him any songwriting credits. He was like a paid employee, and I think that bothered him. So he bolted. As far as I know, he is not in that guy's not in the music business anymore. He went back to being a carpenter or whatever he does, and you know
Hmm.
that
I'm
that that
curious,
was that was that was something kind of crazy.
I'm curious if he would have any good stories to tell.
Oh,
Just
he probably have a ton of stories,
hmm.
a ton of stories. You know, yeah, yeah. He probably way more than me. I wouldn't even know how to get a hold of him. Otherwise, I'd just give you his contact information. But he was probably one of the nicest kids, younger kids then. It's so weird. I say kids, they're all like in their 40s and 50s now. And I'm like, oh my God, man. It's crazy.
That's
But,
a
yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else. I'm sure there's other things, but they were like the most the things that I wanted to that I thought you might have liked that we kind of touched on before. So, if you don't mind me asking, you as a guitar player, like, who did you like when you were growing up?
Uh, so I usually try to narrow down to like a list of top five. Number one, it's always got to be Eddie Van Halen.
Uh-huh. All right. Yeah.
But as of late, I guess my number two is usually Ingve, which I mean, I find myself kind of arguing with that though, because
Yeah.
I'd probably say early Ingve. Too much of what he does now is just kind of rehashing the same idea, which,
Yeah.
eh, take it or leave it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Uh,
I get
so
it.
three, I would probably say Jeff Beck, just because, well, every single thing that he plays, every single time he plays, it's always different, but it's always Jeff Beck.
Yeah.
Always growing, never the same, yet always iconically Jeff Beck.
Hmm.
Um, oh man, I'm forgetting the four and five. I would probably say John Sykes, obviously Blue Murder, Whitesnake.
Yeah.
And then maybe five, it usually rotates around a couple different ones, but I usually end up pointing towards Alan Holdsworth just because I can never wrap my mind around what he was doing.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting. So I think my top five would definitely be Eddie Van Halen, number one, always.
Sure.
Um, my number two, that was number one for a while when I was growing up, was Randy Rhoads, because I was able to get my mind around what he was doing a little bit easier than, because like Eddie, I was like, yeah, I could do that, but it was never right. Like, you think the stuff that you're not copying off of him is a mistake, but it's that's what's making it sound authentic.
Sure.
And grazing over those minute details is what's not making it sound authentic when you're trying to copy or learn or whatever. I mean, I got great ideas from, but at the time I was studying classical guitar, so I could identify with what Randy was writing, and everything at the end of the day, to me, in hindsight, is that there had to be good songwriting. I look at things now. I'm like, yeah, okay, they're fast. Okay, like he sounds like Ingve, but faster. Like Eddie Van Halen, but faster. Yeah, but they don't have any songs. Like it's just like it's the same crap. Three
Sure.
three notes per string, like the different sequences. Like, yeah, I get it, I get it, I get it. And then so then once I kind of had a grasp on kind of being able to figure out what Randy was doing, and a lot of his lines were synonymous with some of the classical lines. I kind of had that, and then somebody turned me on to Al Di Meola, and I'm like,
Love him.
There's no way, there's no way he's picking all those notes, and I really, I like. There's a few songs that I really like, but most of his selections, I don't. I just, it's too much of the same stuff. I'm like, I just want to hear him play like "Race with the Devil" all the time. Like,
Yep.
And then John McLaughlin, I always thought
Mhm.
he had a great style. It was a great style, but again, I didn't like the harmony to a lot of his songs. A lot of his songs were so avant-garde sounding with all the fourths and elevenths. It's just like it's a little too atonal for me. So he kind of never really made like from a lead perspective, a solo perspective. I liked him, loved Al Di Meola, and then I'm like, I'm setting my sights for I want to be able to play like that. And then here comes Ingve Malmsteen, and I'm like, there's no friggin' way. This guy, they sped up the record. There was, I heard that him, a buddy of mine. Do you ever hear Jim Carra guitars? He
Uh,
he makes all the replicas for like Gene Simmons, Ace Frehley.
right.
He and I were in a band when we were like 18 years old, and he goes, "Dude, my friend works at a radio station. Check this. This guy's the greatest guitar player in the whole world." Yeah, whatever. I'm like, no way, no. And I just listened to that. It wasn't a Steeler record. It was Alcatraz, and I listened to that over and over, and like every solo, every song was great. Like it had a soul about it, and I was like, oh my gosh. But at the same time, I was really getting into Alan Holdsworth. Had no idea what he was doing. But if your ear was trained enough and you listen to that IOU record, that was really some great composition. And then the next couple records had great composition. The more he started, it just started sounding like you said, it's a little bit homogenized, sound like the same different versions of the original great records that they had done, kind of like Yngwie, you know.
Sure.
But yeah, I
It's
still.
funny you mentioned Alcatraz, though. I think it was episode 15 or 16 of the podcast. I got to interview the keyboardist, Jimmy Waldo, and then this upcoming week, literally tomorrow, interview I did with the bass player, Gary Shea. That's coming out.
Yeah, really.
Yeah,
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I got to see them. I got to see him. We had a gig. We were playing. I was in a cover band. This is before I started working at Ivan. It was 1984, and we had this cover band, and Alcatraz was opening for Ted Nugent at the Tower Theater in Philadelphia. I was like, we have to go. We have to see this. There's no way he's going to be able to pull off what he recorded live. And we were just like, we were driving to the gig, and we're just like, I don't want to play tonight. I was just like, it was, and it was crazy. And then, unfortunately for me, at that time period, I started working at Ibanez, and I started meeting like Vinnie Moore. All these like shredders were coming in, and here I am, didn't know how to do anything with repairs, and they taught me how to do a fret job my first week. The luthiers were in from Japan, so that's when I started really learning that stuff. And I got to work with Stanley Jordan. You remember that guy, the original tapping guy? Yeah. I had a Stratus Bean. I was trying to we were doing the modulus next. In fact, Old School had a gig Saturday, and the guy, I was his predecessor, Jim Donahue, who was there for like 10 years, who did the gem stuff. He did all that stuff, and then he left. He's like working a job now. It's like, and so he said he picked up like when Paul Gilbert started and Steve Vai started, and he was working with them, and Joe Satriani and all. He was telling me some stories about, you should interview him, because he's got stories about like how those guys yelled at him, but then they're like, he told me the story about Steve Vai, and he's like, hey man, we ought to have this thing where we take a little bit of your blood and put it into paint. And he goes, that's a stupid idea. And he, I don't have time for this kind of bullshit. And I'm paraphrasing. And then somebody like at the same day they're at NAMM, and somebody starts interviewing like, what's up for the future? Well, we're going to do something with a paint, and it's going to have my blood in it. After he shot it down, like I guess it was like a knee-jerk kind of thing or something like that. I don't know. But he's a guy. I'll find his contact information if you want to interview him. I'll bet he's got a ton of stories. So, and
awesome.
Yeah, am I going too far out of context?
That's all right. Before we wrap things up with Old School, anything else you're doing? Is there anything you want to be promoting?
Just my real estate business. If you know anybody that needs help buying, selling, or investing in real estate in the southeastern Pennsylvania area, I'm the guy. In fact, there was a big guitar store called Roxy Guitars. I sold that not once but twice. I helped another luthier buy a place. So I do commercial, but I do a lot of residential too. That's my bread and butter.
All right, very cool.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for your time. I appreciate you having me on.
Of course. I appreciate the conversation.
You bet. All right, Max. Yep. Take care. Thanks, bud.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Gig Nightmares. Gig Nightmares is an independently produced podcast made possible by the support of listeners like you. If you enjoyed this week's episode, we would appreciate if you left a rating and a review for us. Gig Nightmares.